Hey, what is up guys, it is RBN Hardware, and in today's video I'm going to show you guys the best 1080p and 1440p gaming and streaming PC you can pick up right now for around $800. Now, due to the GPU shortage, right now it can be quite tricky to get a hold of a dedicated graphics card, as many cards are being bought up by miners, leaving us gamers empty-handed. Now, one card that still to this day delivers great 1080p performance is the GTX 970, and perhaps, one of the coolest perks with this GPU is that you cannot mine Ethereum on it, so this card is pretty much worthless for miners. Right now the 970 is ranging between $130 to $200. In today's video, I'm going to put this card to the test, and we're going to test it in 18 of the current most popular games and both 1080p and 1440p to figure out if this card is worth $200 or not. And in today's video, I'm going to show you guys step by step how to put together this entire $800 gaming PC that you can actually put together right now in 2021, showing you guys all parts I'm using before booting the system up, testing out the gaming performance, and if you follow my steps throughout this video, you should be able to see these numbers in your favorite game with this PC. Now, I will be detailing several of these games, and we're gonna look at that after we completed the PC build. Now, all PC components you see in this video are linked up in the video description. So let's go ahead and start with the motherboard. This is one of the best budget B450 ATX motherboards for 30th Ryzen from MSI, coming in at $110. Now, this board is packed with features and quality heatsinks and VRAMs to handle even the most badass Ryzen CPUs. Before installing the CPU, we need to get rid of these two retention clips, so let's go ahead and do that first. Moving on to the CPU, this is the Ryzen 5 3600 coming in at $199, and this is the CPU choice for today's build. This is a 6-core 12-thread CPU with a 3.6 GHz base clock and a boost clock of 4.2. In terms of raw CPU performance, we can see that this $199 processor is keeping up well versus the competition, making the 6-core 3600 the best budget gaming and streaming CPU pick right now. To install the CPU, we need to line up this triangle located at the lower left side of the CPU. With this triangle on the motherboard socket, pull back the retention arm, line up the triangles, and simply drop the CPU on the socket, then return the lever back down again, and the CPU is locked in place. Now, a cooler is included with the Ryzen 5 3600 that is good enough for stock settings, and honestly, for being a boxed stock cooler, it is actually really good. That all being said, if you do want to spend a few extra dollars on an aftermarket cooler, I do believe that the Esports 34 Duo from Arctic is a great pick. But for today's build guys, we're gonna go with the included stock cooler, and the cooler installment is pretty simple. Simply position the heatsink over the CPU so that the 4 spring screws align with the screw holes on the back plate, and carefully tighten the cooler down in a pattern like so until you feel resistance. Then connect the CPU fan cable to the CPU fan header on the motherboard. And with that done, we can go ahead and move to our next component, which is going to be our memory or RAM. Now, I highly recommend going for a 16GB dual kit with a rated speed of 3000 to 3200. And pretty much any kit will work here guys. I'm going to link up my top favorite picks down below. Now, this particular kit is coming from Corsair. It is called Vengeance Pro RGB, and it will definitely do the trick for us. This kit is coming in over $100, but there are cheaper options out there as well. Simply pull back the clips for the second and the fourth DIMM slot and plug them in just like so. Now we're almost ready to install a motherboard, but before we do that, let's install our storage as well. Now this is the A2000 from Kingston. This is the 500GB variant, but there is a 1TB option as well. You can basically pick any 500GB NVMe drive out there and expect short and speedy loading times. I'm specifically choosing Kingston because they offers great price and performance, and the A2000 has never let me down. Now you can also go with an SSD if you want to, and by doing so you can actually save about $10 here, and I'm linking up a few great options down below. Take up the screw, then slide in the A2000 in with a 45-degree angle, just like so, and then we can go ahead and secure it down. Now, picking a case for a budget build is by no means easy. Now, throughout my PC building videos, I've used cases such as the P300A, the NZXT H510, as well as the Lian Li Longcool 215, and all of these guys are great budget cases, and all of these three will work awesome for today's build. But that being said, yeah, for today's build, I decided to go with the Asus TUF GT301. Now this is a $93 mid-tower with 3 ARGB fans at the front, plus a non-RGB one we find at the rear. Thanks to the included fan controller, the front fans can be addressed and customized via the ARGB controller button that we find at the front. We find great cooling potential thanks to the perforated front, an option for a 240 radiator installment at the top. Now to get access to the interior, simply untie 2 thumb screws, and then we can go ahead and remove the tempered glass side window. Now before installing the motherboard, don't forget the so-called motherboard IO shield. This one is going in from the inside of the case. With these audio ports you see here, they should be pointing towards the button. Now we can go ahead and secure the motherboard using the screws that comes provided by Asus. Now a couple of things to have in mind when choosing a PSU. Now since we're dealing with electricity here, which yeah, if unlucky can cause severe damage to our components, I recommend not shipping out on the power supply and sticking to recognizing brands such as VGA, Corsair and Cooler Monster. You're gonna be fine here. Now this is the Corsair CV550. This is a 550 watt unit with 80 plus bronze efficiency certification. Now I've used this in many of my past PC builds, and it's a quality PSU that doesn't make too much noise, it is reliable, it's got black sleeved cables, and it doesn't break the bank. Now make sure that the fan is facing downwards, then gently slide it into place and secure it. Now we're gonna do a couple of cables and wiring before installing our graphics, and first up we got the 24-pin powerful motherboard, and this one goes to the right side of the motherboard. Next up we got the 8-pin power. This is for our CPU, and this one goes all the way up to the top left side corner. Now because Asus has fitted the case with an ARGB and fan controller, we also need SATA power to feed power to this controller. Alright, so now we have reached the point where it's time to install our graphics, and yes guys, for today's build I ended up picking the GTX 970 with 3.5 GB of fast G5 memory. This is enough for 1080p high to medium settings and even 1440p gaming at lower graphics. Keep in mind though guys, because of the limited VRAM buffer for demanding games such as Red Dead Redemption 2, textures will look a bit dull and flat, especially in 1080p. But frankly, I think you will be surprised how far you can actually push the 970 in today's modern games. But before we look at the gaming benchmarks, let's quickly discuss pricing. Right now the 970 cannot be bought on Amazon, but there are quite a few options available on eBay ranging from $130 to $230. I found a 970 auction. This is the MSI Twin Frozer, the exact model that I'm reviewing in this video, with a buy now price of just over $200. Now I know what you're thinking, that isn't cheap, and I totally agree. Before the mining boom, the 970 could actually be found for just over $100. With that in mind, I still believe that this is a great 1080p graphics card to pick up in 2021 if your budget is limited and you do want to get a hold of a GPU right now at this moment. In terms of performance, the 970 performs similar to the 1060 3GB variant, and it isn't that much lower than a Radeon RX 580, currently selling for quite a lot more. But yeah, with that said, let's take a deeper look at some of the games tested, and let's kick off the benchmark with Days Gone. Starting with 1080p, and here I'm settling for medium settings. This gives us a frame rate of 66 FPS on average and 50 FPS at 1% low. Bumping the resolution to 1440p, I ended up dropping the settings to low. This gave us a comfortable frame rate of 65 FPS on average, totally playable in other words. Next up we have Biomutant, and as you guys can see, I am picking a mix between medium to high graphics here, and starting at 1080p, and here we're getting about 83 FPS and a 1% low at 69. At 1440p resolution, again using similar settings as before, yeah, results in an average of 65 FPS. So let's move on to Red Dead Redemption 2. Let's start having a look at 1080p, where I'm selecting a mix between high to medium. This is giving us an average frame rate of 61 FPS, at 1% low at 51. And at the settings the game is looking gorgeous. Bumping the resolution to 1440p results in 38 FPS, and looking at the settings, you guys can see that I'm selecting a mix between low to medium settings here. And moving on to our latest ad in our gaming benchmarks, Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Starting at 1080p, and this will have you sitting at a comfortable 130 to 140 FPS with 1% low at around 90. Looking at the settings, well, this is what the graphics selection looks like, so not a whole lot to work with here. Anyway, at 1440p, using the same settings as before, results in 115 FPS on average. Next up we have Death Stranding, starting at 1080p medium to high settings, and here we're getting about 79 FPS. Whereas in 1440p we saw 48 FPS on average, using a mix between low to medium settings. Last up we have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. At 1080p medium settings you can expect 82 FPS. Whereas in 1440p low to medium settings, 55 FPS is what you can expect. Again guys, all PC components can be found down below. We also now have an official Discord server for the channel, and if you want to become a part of the community, share your PC build or ask questions either to me or any of the awesome people on the channel, you definitely want to go ahead and join the Discord server today. Link can be found down below. In the meantime, watch either of these two videos and I will see you guys in the next video.